I'm Gerald White, and I'm a photorealistic artist, and this is my story. I'm a freelance artist. I started my professional work at 18 with commissions from Dr. Margaret Burroughs at the Sabo Museum in Chicago. I was on a school field trip to another school, and we were walking down a hallway, and there was this drawing framed up on the wall of a black woman in a dashiki holding a baby. It was the mother and child piece. It was by this artist named Cushbay. And that changed my life, because until then, that year I liked drawing, but I hadn't seen something that inspired me to the point where I knew this is what I wanted to do. But when I saw that piece, it triggered something. It was in my spirit, in my soul. When I was 18, a friend of my mother's and the mother of one of my friends took me to meet Dr. Margaret Burroughs, who was the curator of the Sabo Museum. And she hired me, commissioned me to do a collage piece of Martin Luther King. And that was my first professional piece. I got into fine art about 10 years or so later. A friend of mine named Wack, who was really getting popular doing prints of his work, told me that I needed to do the same thing. And following behind him, he was working with a gallery owner named Zebra, who had a gallery in downtown Chicago. So I contacted Zebra, and we made deals to do some prints. And that worked for a couple of years. I'm a self-taught artist, so I didn't see the limitations that a lot of artists would see. So they would look at stuff and say, oh, what's hard to draw? Do you have problems with ears, or do you have problems drawing noses? And I just never saw those limitations. I never saw limitation in style. I saw things and I would try it, and if I liked it, I kept doing it. I work in numerous media in terms of dry work, wet work. So I work in pencil, colored pencil, pastels, pen and ink, charcoal. I work in watercolors, acrylics, oils, airbrush. I've done sculpture. I've done calligraphy. I've done a lot of different things. So I never really limited myself or thought about one style. I love photorealism, but I've done everything from the photorealism and cartooning to superheroes. I grew up on comics. My style is kind of fluid, though most of the time what I'm doing is portraits, because I cut my teeth, as the saying goes, on drawing portraits. I spent 11 years drawing portraits on the street, and that has been a mainstay, but it's not a limitation. So the first thing is what they call traditionally they call it gesture drawing. So basically I'll do a rough sketch of the movement, right? Or whatever characters or ideas that are going to be the focal point. And I'll do the movement, how they're moving across the paper. And then once I've got that, then I start to work in certain details to really give it shape and form. Creatively, I'm self-taught. What worked was always doing research. Researching as much as possible. I researched mythology, I researched religion, I researched history and philosophy, and those things always were incorporated with some form of imagery. So I would find images of Jesus, images of just some of everything, and that would just take me deeper into the process. So research, you know, I would tell people, if they want to be an artist, do the research. What I found as a self-taught artist was that most of the people that I came in contact with who were taught in school did not perform or produce the same level of quality. Most of them, they struggled. You know, and I would run into them a lot. They would say, hey, you know, I rarely see people that can do work like you. You know, where did you study at? And I was like, I studied, you know, at home, the armchair. I studied at the library. You know, every time it was called punishment block, I was on punishment, so I had to stay there, and that's all I did was draw. And training in martial arts when I was 5, because I was watching Bruce Lee in the Green Hornets show. I loved Kato, and that was that was really inspired me to become a practitioner. Bruce Lee is still my favorite. And I like a lot of people, but Bruce is still my favorite. At nudity, always is something sexual. It is something beautiful and sensual and nurturing. And if someone pulls sex from that, that is them and that's fine, so long as that is not all they're pulling. But for me, when I see that, I just see the beauty. I always thought that Billie Holiday was just remarkable, and I had been meaning to do a portrait of her all my life, you know, for decades. And so I was starting to work on a series of jazz and blues artists, and Billie is the lady. Burgess Meredith. Yeah. So Burgess Meredith was this great character actor for decades. Yes, he played the Penguin. He played Rocky's mentor in all of the Rocky films. And he was just astounding. He was really, really great. I enjoyed him. I watched him in a plethora of black and white movies and movies in color, stuff coming from, yeah. And that's part of the reason why I'm always saying to young people, like, study, do research. Yeah, you know, research, man. Better to be knowledgeable and over-prepared than ignorant and unprepared. What I share with young people is that the greatest problem that most artists have is in handling the business. If you want to go to school for something, go to school for business. The worst thing I ever did was work with someone who was unscrupulous, and I trusted them to have my back because we were working together. And I learned the hard way. So I would suggest that people really do the research, learn some things about law, especially learn about the business if they're going to be an artist. You can create your craft without somebody holding your hand. I know that. Building my skill was something I did on my own. It wasn't because somebody held my hand or taught me the way. I created the way. I love art. And we never stop learning, and I'm constantly working at the craft because I would do this for no money because it's my bliss. You know, even though I want to get paid, but I would do this because it's my absolute bliss. Yeah, it makes me happy. A picture paints 1,000 words. So we have to tell these stories that present something or ask the hard questions. I want to ask some hard questions. I'm Gerald White, and I'm a photorealistic artist.